So we're going to add on the new moons and the full moons. Okay, so here we go. It's just a little note, or wrote it down. To do this, we have to observe the sun and see when the moon is in the same sign and close to the same degree. For the new moon, whenever there's a new moon, you mark a little dark blue mark on the side of the sun column. When the moon's in the opposite sign and close to the same degree, it'll be in a full moon, and we place a little golden or yellow mark on the side of the sun column. You can use whatever colors you want. These are the colors I used. When you see a new or full moon, you also need to look over to the nodes column to see if the nodes are within 15 degrees of the new or full moon. This would designate an eclipse. If this is so, then mark a dark blue or golden line underline in the nodal column. This way it'll be easy to spot the eclipses. So new moons and full moons are an important part of your progressions because you have the sun going around. It's your attitude, it's your inner theme, it's your spiritual growth during your life. It shows you go through the signs. As it is, there's going to be new moons and full moons where the moon, the past and the future come together, where your memories and your hopes for the future join together. These new moons and full moons are the spiritual wake-up points. They're the really profound inner development points in your life. Every 15 years there's one. So here on this first sheet, second column, one beside the sun, is the moon column. And you see the sun's just gone into Scorpio. There's the moon hitting Scorpio. So I just drew a line, a little blue line there to mark that's a new moon. We're not marking huge things. There's not a lot of them. Then the sun was in Scorpio, the moon went in Taurus, and when I got to the opposing degree, that would be the full moon. I use a gold or orange line because it's the full moon, it's brighter, and the new moon's a darker one. So when I look here, just going along. Then we go down further, and the sun goes into Sag, and it's a new moon. There's the moon in Sag. There's the new moon marked. When I look over here at the nodes, there's the true node in the first one, and the second one's the approximate node, which is there because it was used so many times for so long by people. A lot of people don't like to have to do. Some people don't like to. I like to use the true one. I think if you got it, you use the true one. Of course, you use the true one. It's what's happening. It's not just the approximate. So here it is at 1143 of Gemini, but that's within 15 degrees of the 1 degree Sag. So we know this is going to be an eclipse, a solar eclipse. Okay, and that would have been in 1984. 1984, yep. Yeah, I remember that. Well, the transits at that time were Saturn, Pluto, Mars, and Jupiter with all conjunct my sun. It's like a little intense time. Okay, but a lot of inner growth. So, okay, you're going to hear all about my story as we go through all this stuff. I'm not going to get into it so much now. But then we get down to the next one. We're looking at the sun gets to Sagittarius. There's the moon in Gemini. Okay, we know the full moon's in there. And we just see it's at 16, so you put the mark just before it gets to 19. There's the full moon. And since 19 is not far away from 11 degrees, it's still within the eclipse mode. So you see the mark is there and the mark is here on the nodes. So there's always 4 eclipses in a year. Sometimes there's an extra one in there, but at the 2 halves of the year. So they're there. So if there's one, there's going to be another one. The next one, or the one before it, was an eclipse too. So then we go along. The sun went into Capricorn. There was the moon went into Capricorn, and there was another new moon. So just mark it there. But even knowing the year it's happening, that's really useful when you're looking across a lifetime. Then I get the full moon in Capricorn, moon in Cancer. That's going to be in 2028. And that puts in. So then the next new moon will be in my 90s if I live that long. Okay, so like so there's my progressed sun with the full moons and new moons marked right in there very conveniently. I mean, when you're using this, when you're getting to get to the exact times, you're either going to calculate them or you're going to go to a computer and get a printout and you have the exact times when these things happen. But this is close enough to organize it so you know where it is in your lifetime and what you're working toward. You can see which phase of the moon you're working through. That's huge. the phases of the moon, the reason for these new moons and full moons, if you add the phases of the moon to these, which is the halfway, you mark in the halfway points, you work with the phase of the moon and you start watching it as your spiritual guide. It becomes a really, those interpretations become really useful, and you can really see them. You live them for, you live each phase for 7 years. Okay, now that's, okay, so now we're, oh yeah, we have to add in the house cusps. So we have to mark in the house cusps when the sign changes houses. Now, that's not in the ephemeris. We have to know where the house cusps are from our chart and see if it crosses the house cusp or an angle. If it goes over an angle, I make a slightly thicker line than the other house cusps. I use blue-green for this just to add another color around it. And I drew the line from the outer edge of the ephemeris to the outer edge of the ephemeris where the dates are shown. Okay, I'll show you. This is just show and tell, but it's just helps you organize it in one step at a time. It makes sense. It's not so complicated. You look at all at once, you're not sure. But here, my son's in the second house at the end, and it just in the first year and a half, it went into, there's house 2, it went into house 3. I put the house 3 right on the edge, with a blue line going into just at the beginning of the sun. So it's not right across. It would be the same as the other, but it's there so you notice it as you're going down a column. So there's house 3. So then I'll go along. My IC, it'll hit my IC next. It's my IC, main angle, thicker line, then I put that one right across. That's right at 28 Scorpio. Then it's going to hit my 5th house cusp. It did hit my, I mean, I lived all that, so I got lesser things ahead than I have behind me. House 5, 4 to 5 degrees of Capricorn. It's just going into house 5. Will stay most of my life. I have to get past 100 if I'm going to get into house 6. Okay, so I don't have to worry about the house 6 making me sick. I'll be dead and gone by then. Okay, I'm going to play my way out as seriously as I can. Okay, that's what you want for the sun. You just have the changing of signs, the new moons and the full moons, and the house cusps. You can just look at this anytime and more or less begin to interpret the basics of where your progressions are so you don't forget where they are. With progressions, you don't just measure them and say, oh, I know what it is for the rest of my life. You're growing and you're learning through it as you live it. They develop, they grow. It's your inner being growing within your outer normal sun sign ego. With my Libra ego, I have to go through my Scorpio inner phase, passionate phase, my understanding phase, and then the judgment phase, or the accomplishment phase, or the discipline phase, or the old phase in Capricorn. So you're going to have different attitudes to this, but it's shifting the inner attitude of what you're searching for inside of being the Libra. I mean, really, there should be sun sign books that write, here's the sun sign, and here's what happens in the Scorpio phase, the Sagittarius phase, and the Capricorn phase for Libras, or the Taurus, the Gemini, and the Cancer for Aries. Like that. When you think of a sign, you automatically should be starting to think that sign and the next 3 signs. So that's their lifetime. They're going to go through that. See, you look at the natal chart, you see the sun, and you see this next phase. Just imagine it. It's one of the things you can do with progressions. You can see what a progressed sun would approximately be. You know, someone's age approximately, you can still imagine where it would be. But then this is just doing that for you to confirm it more exactly. And then you can see new ones and full ones and the house cusp changes. Okay. So that out of all the information we can get, that sets up certain basic things very nicely, very comfortably. Easy to relate to. So now we're going to set up the moon progressions. Now the moon progressions, there's more things that happen because the moon is the only planet in progressions that will go around the chart 3 times. It's almost like Saturn, a little faster, but almost 27.5 years to go around. But from new moon to new moon is 30 years like a Saturn cycle, 29, 30 years like Saturn cycle. So they kind of parallel each other. If you have your moon and Saturn conjunct, they're going to, or just close in the same sign, they're going to follow each other for a lot of years and slowly separate from each other, but never get that far away in your lifetime. So we get a new ephemeris we file the Saturn one, the Sun one, and we're going to highlight the lunar column. And as we put in the lunar column, we're going to highlight it. I used the light blue. I'm also going to, now I left the sun on it so that you can see the new moons and full moons. Just, I kept that like that so you can see this. This is a second sheet of ephemeris, but then as I'm putting in, I shaded in, the first thing I'm putting in is when the moon gets back to its own place, when you have the lunar return, when the moon comes back to its own place, I've marked the date when that happens. That's kind of a beginning. You have the new moons that are beginning of the main sun-moon cycle, the phases. But you also have the cycle of the moon conjuncting the moon and then moving away from it and coming back to it. So this marks the conjunction points, the lunar return points. A lot of people, some people like to do the chart for the lunar returns or for the solar returns when the sun goes back to the same degree. It's but unfortunately there's two different systems. In Vedic, it has one way of doing it. Well, they both do it the same way, but they have one time that comes out, and then the tropical comes out other, and they're both like almost totally opposite to each other. They're not near the same, so there's two different solar returns, so you can rationalize. So I end up not using. I like to watch the phases and the phases develop and what stage is happening, like a music going on. Oh, this note is it's hitting my progressive moon's hitting my lunar, it's hitting my moon. So I marked in the lunar returns, which you're going to get 2 or 3 in a lifetime. There's another one right on at 2000. And there's another one at 2026. No, 2028. There, yeah. So, and that's going to be the full moon, and it's going to be within a few degrees of my lunar return. Okay, so that's the first thing we're doing with the moon. We just highlighted the column. We marked in when it's in the same degree our moon is in. We just mark it in. Okay. Another layer of information. Really, all my classes, everything's about layers, adding this layer, adding this layer, this. So here we're just adding different layers on here so we can look at it and have that information there. So we can see it and know more or less where it is without having to think too much and do mathematical calculations all the time. So we can look at this intuitively, not just intellectually, to start to see, to observe it. So after this, it's too much to mark in every house change because that's happening every 2.5 years. It's too much. But we mark in when the moon conjuncts the IC, the ascendant, the midheaven, the descendant. When it hits the 4 angles of any of the angles of your chart, we're going to mark that in. We're going to be going over these in detail, but we'll be spending a day on each planet. But I just have to get this organized to begin with. So here, there's the ascendant. It's going to be every 7 years, or it can be shorter or longer. One section, depending how equal your houses are, how far apart they are from each other. But you're seeing it across the main angles, above, below, rising, setting. And it just marks in. I just mark them like the houses from the. This is why why you do separate ones, because if you have the sun one there and the houses for the sun, you're going to have double systems. The house is going to get complicated. So this is one just for the moon, when the moon hits the descendant, when the moon hits the midheaven, I draw this line over. I don't put any dates in. The dates are already there with the progressed constant date. I just put the time, the degree it's happening in. And I can look, when I see that's going on, oh, I can then figure out what's that year. With the moon, the sun, any aspect, it's going to take, when it goes across the house, it's going to hit that cusp or that angle a degree before and a degree after. It's a 2-year aspect. With the moon, it's about 2-month aspect. A degree is about 2 months. So there's 2 to 4 months orb of influence of the progressed moon. It seems like it's going fast, but when you're looking at progressions, the moon is the fastest. When you're looking at transits, Saturn's so slow, it seems like it takes forever, but it's going at the same speed as the progressed moon. Whoa. Okay. So we've marked in when it cuts the house cusps, and as it goes around your chart, so you're seeing the different cycles. Now we have to set up Mercury. That's it. That's all we want for the moon. We're not going to put in sign changes because it changes every 2.5 days or 2.5 years. You'd have every line would be marked as too much. You can read that. But now